right, so today I figured I'd just chat with you guys about some of my recurring expenses as an audio engineer. All right, so you guys may or may not know that I work full time as an audio engineer. So that means a variety of things, right? So I do make these YouTube videos, right? That's part of my monthly activity, I guess, whatever you want to call it. But I also mix music, record music. I have a corporate gig where I process audio for a CEO network. I teach at a college, so I teach audio for film students. I've taken on other freelance gigs, like doing sound design projects for short films, for video games, stuff like that. So it's kind of each month to month, it's going to be a little different what I'm actually doing for work, but it's all audio stuff. So, like in the past, I've done live sound, for example. Nowadays, it's all more on the recording, sound design, mixing side of things. But that's what I'm doing. It's full time, but it's different depending on the week, the day, the month, stuff like that. So I really love my job. I love doing what I do. I love being able to work in my home studio and control my hours to some extent. I love being able to be creative with my work and having control over that, deciding when to accept or reject a gig. I love all of the stuff that comes with doing a lot of your work freelance, right? Which is a big portion of my work is freelance. So I like that part of it. But the other part of it is that for all of this stuff that's here in my home studio, all of the stuff that I do freelance, I have expenses that are involved, right? And even some of the stuff that I don't do freelance, those can sometimes leak into the expenses that are involved. So in a lot of ways, it's like when you run your own business, you're going to have expenses that are involved. So I figured we'd just talk about that a little bit today. So one of the more obvious ones might be electricity, right? So to run all this gear that I have in my home studio, I need electricity to run it. That can make my electricity bill much larger than it would otherwise be. So that might be very obvious to most of you, but it's not insignificant, right? We have to pay for the electricity to run all of this gear. And, the more gear you have, the more power it might suck. So that's just something to keep in mind. Another couple of things that I do that are recurring expenses is I do ear training. So I use Sound Gym and Tone Gym. There are a bunch of other services that you can use out there. I'll put links to these in the description. These are just the ones that I use, that I enjoy, that I like. And I have whole videos on sound. I think I have a video on Sound Gym. So I'll put a card on the screen for that if you want to see what's involved in that a little bit more. But basically, these are recurring expenses. So I think it's like, I think I'm signed up for like the yearly subscription renewal, but I think there are other options you can do too that are like monthly or whatever. So I just do that to kind of keep my ears, my chops together, keep my ears so that they're improving, so that they're developing. Hopefully I'm getting better at hearing things, at working with things, at understanding things, being able to listen and know how to get from point A to point B. So both Sound Gym and Tone Gym, they both are gamifying ear training. And so Tone Gym is more on the musical side of things. Sound Gym is more on the audio engineering side of things. So Sound Gym has stuff like teaching you how to hear compression, EQ, stuff like that. Whereas Tone Gym is more like hearing different musical intervals and stuff like that. And they also have like whole sections on their website where you can get access to like learning videos and stuff like that. So they're pretty good resources. These are kind of what I think of when I think of expenses that I have that are for self-improvement, professional self-improvement. So those are a recurring expense that I make. Some more recurring expenses that I have now as an audio engineer that I didn't used to have are subscriptions to software, right? So what I've done in previous years is I would just buy the software outright. So if it was a plugin or if it was something like Pro Tools, like a DAW, I would try to just buy it outright, and then I would hang on to that for, however long, as long as I could, hopefully, and still have it work to my satisfaction. But nowadays what I'm doing is a lot of the plugin services, plugin companies, and then DAW companies have switched over to subscription services, and there are some advantages there. You get access to the newest version of the software. If you want to upgrade, you can just upgrade. You don't have to worry about paying again. But a lot of people don't like the subscription because you might end up paying more for it in the end. You know, it's just whether or not you're constantly upgrading or if you're hanging on to it for longer. And that's just kind of a decision you have to make. I do have the subscriptions. Part of that is because I want to be up on whatever the new version of Pro Tools is because of doing videos like this and teaching. So that's a big part of it. I do get educational discounts because I teach at a college. So there is that. If you're a student, you can also usually get educational discounts depending on the company. But that's just another expense for me, right? So for better or for worse, that's something that I've decided to do. So I do have my Pro Tools subscription. And then I also have like some of my plugins are subscription based. I think some of my Slate stuff is. I'm not sure exactly what is subscription based. I'd have to look at everything in more detail, but just know, you know, some plugins, some software, you might have the option of a subscription based plan. And if you choose that, then that's going to be a recurring expense for you. So you want to weigh the pros and cons and then decide if that's something you want to do. What I've been doing lately is if I can buy a plugin outright, I'll just buy it. But then for Pro Tools, I'm doing the subscription. And then I also have the subscription for Adobe Creative Cloud. So that is supplied through the college where I teach, so I don't have to worry about that a ton, but it is a recurring cost that I incur, right? No matter who's paying for it, it's being incurred. So that's just another thing to keep in mind if you're, for example, running the numbers involved in being something like a freelance audio engineer. All these little subscriptions and costs, they do add up. So just something to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is data storage costs, right? So through the college, I get unlimited Google Drive. Some of you guys might have to pay for something like an online cloud storage system, right? Other than that, there's also external hard drives. That's something that I also use. Systems like Box, or I don't know, there's like a million different cloud storage services. Avid has their own now that I have not started using yet. But basically, data storage can cost money, right? So whether that's through purchasing like external or even internal hard drive space, or it's through something like a cloud storage system, that can sometimes cost money. So besides the things that I've mentioned already, there are a few things that I think that people don't really think about or plan ahead about, if that makes sense. And I think it's really important to bring them up. So one of those things is the idea of new computer expenses every however many years. So I think it's a good idea every month to put away a little bit of money and just save that money for something like a new computer fund, because periodically you're going to want to upgrade. And if you haven't planned out for this, that can be a huge expense that you're then going to have to adjust to or figure out really quickly. So what I recommend doing is actually putting a little bit of money away each month for something like a new computer, a new system, new gear as well. So you could also have a new gear fund that maybe is a little more flexible than the new computer fund. I feel like upgrading your computer every so often is maybe a little more necessary than getting whatever the new piece of gear is that you want. But it does depend on how you're running things, how you're working things. It completely depends on you and your priorities. But I would just make sure that you're prepared for the expense of every so often having a large chunk of money that you're going to need to put towards a new computer or a new piece of gear. And another thing that people don't really think about is having a gear repair fund, right? So every so often something might break or need to be repaired to some capacity. So I would just be ready for that, right? So put a little bit of money away each month. Maybe it doesn't have to be as much as you would put towards like a new computer fund or a new gear fund, but just be prepared to every so often have to pay for some kind of repair. So depending on your skill level with repairing gear, that might involve, investing in things like a soldering iron or actual pieces of equipment to repair gear, or actual components for the gear when you realize what is actually broken. Or it might involve saving up so that you can then bring something to a repair shop and have them repair it. So I would just keep in mind that that's an expense that you might have to incur periodically. It's not exactly like a recurring expense like a lot of the other stuff that we spoke about at the beginning of this video, but it's still very important to think about. So I think those are pretty much all of the expenses that I tend to regularly incur through my work as an audio engineer. The other thing to keep in mind is that you can do some things to help lower costs in terms of like taxes and stuff. So I know that doesn't sound super exciting, but you can do stuff like, I believe you can incorporate, and I don't know exactly how this works because I now go to professionals for taxes and everything, but I do recommend doing that because it can get really complicated. But if you incorporate yourself, what you can do, and this is what I've been told by professionals, is then you can start to write off things like your home studio. So whatever percentage of your home is dedicated to your home studio, you can then write that off as a tax, I don't know, break, cut off, whatever it is. You can write off things like your vehicle, depending on if you use your vehicle for work. You can write off depreciation for your gear. You can write off a whole bunch of things if you actually incorporate and become an official like business entity. And to be honest, you know, I kind of did like a triple major, and one of my majors was economics. So I know I've covered this stuff before, but I'm pretty rusty on it. So I'm not going to go into detail on that because I don't think that would be fair for me to go into detail on that. But there is a pretty good episode of Pro Studio Live where we had the featured guest was someone that does taxes for people that are in the entertainment industry, a lot of audio engineers, a lot of musicians, a lot of performers. And he recommended a lot of this stuff. So I will put a link in the description to that for you guys. I think you might need a membership to access it. I'll figure that out and like write about it in the description for you guys. But it's pretty interesting. I know it sounds like it would be kind of like a dry topic, but it's actually pretty interesting, some of the stuff that you can do to help reduce costs. So in addition to keeping in mind that you're going to incur these regular expenses like your DAW subscription, your ear training if you're doing stuff like that, self-improvement stuff, data storage stuff, in addition to keeping all that stuff in mind, and then also keeping in mind that every so often big expenses like a new computer or new gear, I would also think about ways that you can actually lower your costs. So, you know, stuff like what I was just talking about with taxes, but then also think of other creative ways to lower your costs. So I guess I would love to hear in the comments below what ways you guys have found to lower costs, whether that's, you know, through doing audio stuff as a hobby or if you're running it as a business. I would love to hear what things you guys have come up with, what you found to work. And then also let me know if I missed anything here on the list of expenses. What have you found to be expenses while working as an audio engineer? I guess another one that we could add is if you're hiring like session musicians to come into the studio every so often, that would also be an expense that you might not really think about otherwise. Usually you would just have the client pay for that, I guess, but you know, it depends on how you're running things. And I mean, in a way, you could argue that all of these costs we're building into whatever the client is paying. So I guess, I don't know, I'm just talking in circles now. But that's another thing that you might have as an expense is session musicians, stuff like that. So yeah, I guess this topic's run its course. Those are all my thoughts on regular or recurring expenses as an audio engineer. So I hope someone liked this video, someone found this video helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And you know, all the usual stuff like comment, subscribe, share my channel with your friends. I would appreciate all that stuff. And I do have a Patreon, so it's patreon.com/CatoNoise, and my patrons do get access to additional content. So I think that's about it. I come out with new videos every Wednesday, and thank you for watching. Okay. Gosh, I keep coughing. I'm sorry. It's like keeps cutting into what I'm saying. There are going to be a million cuts in this video. So every so often you'll want to update your computer or upgrade your computer. I've had to do this every so often, every handful of years. Are you going to be bad? I'm just going to take you out. I'm going to unplug you. I actually successfully this year stopped using Q-tips in my ear. So I'm really proud of myself for that because I know it's really bad for you to... It's bad for your ears to use Q-tips in your ears, and it's so hard not to when you're used to doing it. And I'm really surprised that I actually successfully did it. I ran out of Q-tips like months ago, and I think part of it's being like in quarantine because of COVID. I was able to actually stop using them, and I have not bought new ones. So I'm pretty proud of myself about that. Yeah. My friends are weird. Real weird. All right. That's a pretty dry topic. Why did I pick that topic? Oh well. I already filmed it, so here we are. I guess I'd like to get your perspective on it more than put out my perspective on it. I want to hear from you guys about what you have as recurring expenses and how you've lowered expenses. If you get solar panels, that might lower expenses. That'd be cool. I don't know where I'd put them though, because I'm in a condo. So, all right. Well, I guess I'll see you guys around. Bye.